This is just a quick run through of how to calculate your sources and sinks of carbon dioxide. So the sources are those things that are contributing to global warming. You have a source whenever you're operating a machine using electricity. And your sinks are the carbon that is sequestered in your trees and in your biomass when you're farming, and that converts into carbon dioxide and can be matched then with your sources. So at the end of a year, after you've added up your emissions from your electricity use every day, you can do your sink calculation and you can check whether or not your trees have absorbed as much or more of the carbon dioxide than you've emitted. So let's just look first at this sheet, which lets you calculate your emissions. First, in this particular column B, enter all the gadgets that you're using. In my case, I've got a kettle, a Mac, a water pump, a washing machine, a fan, a light, a mobile, data that I upload and download, like these videos, an induction stove. I also use a car, which if it's not a Terracan, you can go on the internet and you can look for the emission factor for the car that you're actually using. Usually the manufacturers just upload this data as grams of carbon dioxide per kilometer. And then there's road and rail, and I cook with LPG, so this is the emission factor for LPG. Next, you just have to look at your emission factors carefully because you might not be using coal. If you're using solar or wind or diesel, here are the emission factors. You can check the ones on this Wikipedia link that I've given you in the sheet. Then you must also put in the ratings of your equipment. So in the case of the kettle, you can see here, for example, here's the photo of the rating, 1500 watt. So that gets entered here, 1.5 kilowatt. The Mac uses 30 watt, water pump 300 watt, and so on. Next, how many hours do you use this machine for? I certainly don't use the kettle more for half an hour. Like this, you put in all the things. In the case of data, don't fidget with this number because even if you're using solar for all the other things, storage of data is out of in terms of what kind of electricity is used for storage of data, that's out of your control. That's just the grid emission factor. So just leave that as 1 kilo per kilowatt hour. And because it's 5 kilowatt hours per GB, we've got an emission factor here of 5 kilograms of carbon dioxide per GB. So then here in your column E, just mention the number of hours, and for the data, mention the number of GB. For cars, mention the number of kilometers. For rail, the number of kilometers. For air, the number of kilometers. And I think just take and then make an assumption that you're using half a liter of LPG a day. By the way, just on this cooking fuel matter, if you're cooking with wood on an open fire, your emission factor is 2.5 kilos of carbon dioxide per kilo of wood burned. I can change this sheet if that's what you're using. Right. So on that basis, one calculates the emissions, multiply the emission factor by the rating and by the hours to get your kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent. In this case, it all adds up to 8 kilos of carbon dioxide per year. So there are your sources. Now let's come to the sinks. The way to understand sinks is to understand that a tree absorbs carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, converts it into carbon both in its above ground biomass and also in its roots and through the mycelium networks in the soil. So to get an approximate value for the sequestration of carbon dioxide by trees, we need their age, the number of that kind of tree, whether the particular species of tree is fast growing, moderate growing, or slow growing. And on that basis, we get a number that we enter in this column F. This particular number you take from this sheet, tree carbon per annum per age, right? So for example, my Pongamia is 4 years old. I think it's a fast-growing tree, so this is the number from this cell J8 that I enter in its in the field here. As far as Casuarina is concerned, I would say that it's moderately growing, and so I choose the value there in that moderate cell. Right, so then we just multiply the number of those trees by the emission factor, and we get the emissions absorbed by the trees in this year. So we can just do a quick calculation. Supposing now we're at the end of the year, you've done this one end of the year calculation for all the trees, and you've added up all your emissions from all your 365 days. Let's just say, for example, that the emissions every day were 8 kilograms, and it's 365 days, so probably you might have got an annual emission of 2,920 kilograms emitted, and on the sink side you will have absorbed 3,975 kilos. So if you just subtract one from the other, you can see that you've actually contributed more than a ton of carbon dioxide removals from the atmosphere in this 1 year. So that's how you use it. I'll send you the sheet and get calculating. Do call me if you've got any questions. Thanks, bye.